What is it, be back in with another video? And today's video is kind of different, man. So I wanted to go over some things, specifically about my book. So this is a new series I want to start. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do it quite yet. This is kind of the first video and kind of how I'm kind of want to explain things a little bit. But pretty much once to twice a week, I want to upload a video going over a chapter in my book that I'm writing, War for the World Survival. Kind of breaking down the chapters and bringing out and talking about the lore of the world, understanding those chapters, kind of going over them a little bit in detail, and going over some things that are not necessarily in the chapters. So, for example, like battles and situations in battles, and kind of going to explain the situation on the ground and how it is on the field. I also want to do some different gameplays for every video, so I might download some games and get some content for the background. Or I'll keep doing Call of Duty, I'm really not sure, but that way you guys have something to watch while you're listening. Some of you guys probably won't be watching the video, might just put the sound in the background and just listen to it while you're doing other things. That's fine. But I am going to just leave it a black screen for y'all. So let's go into why I made the book and what the book's about, and we're going to talk about the two main factions within the book, so that we kind of have a good understanding for the next video when we go into chapter 1. So I created this book, or I started working on this book around 3 years ago, in 2019. That's my earliest documentation of me actually writing the book. I didn't officially start writing it, which is the book that I have now, which is right around 15,000 words, until early 2021. Through 2019 and through 2020, I did a lot of slight changes in my way of thinking about the book. I did a lot of notes and different small things. And I started asking people about it. You know, I started experimenting with the idea of me writing a book. And so there's a big reason, there's a big overtelling of why I wanted to do the book in the first place. And it goes like this. I was always fascinated as a kid with war. And even as a young adult, being 21, I'm still fascinated with the idea of war and battles and dying and conflicts. I think it brings out a lot in the human nature, you know. I think it speaks about how we as humans move on with our lives. Wars have been happening for the last 4,722 years. The first recorded battle in human history was in the year 2700 BCE. And every year, pretty much, since the beginning of human evolution, there has been a battle or war being fought somewhere in the world. And I've always been fascinated by that because it shows that at the end of the day, we are all going to do the same things that our ancestors do. But war is a great thing. People don't seem to comprehend that idea, that war is a great thing, because we are taught from an early age that, you know, fighting and killing is evil. But war has extremely large benefits, if you look throughout history. The death and the carnage caused by war is horrible, yes. But the benefits that we get from war are unsurmountable. You look at the Nazis, they helped create things like the microwave, and technology boomed during the Great Second World War. Technology for mechanics and cars, homes being built, hugely boomed during and after wars. The effects of a war on a human population is undeniable. But I wanted to do the book to express the effect that war can have on the population as a large. But I also wanted to make the book to kind of explain what it would be like in a world where we as a human race took away war and focused on science. and how short-lived that would truly be. Because you have to remember, in all of human history, we have not really truly gone a single year without a conflict in some form. In some part of the world, there's a civil war or a battle between tribes or nations happening. And I think we forget that because we think because we live in a first world country or a second world country or a third world country, and that our country is not in war or in civil war or in anarchy, that those things do not exist. And this book is going to tell the story of millions upon millions of humans who are beginning to understand the idea of a war that will never end. And they understand the life they live is different. So we'll get a quick idea of the situation on Earth during this period. We're going to go into it a little bit, so that way, going into future videos, you kind of have a base understanding of the current economical and political situation that Earth has found itself in. And then so in the early years of 2030s and the 2020s, a lot of things happen. So you have terrorism being completely wiped out. A SEAL team in the early 2030s, the middle 2030s, continue a mission, and they take out one of the leaders of, at that time, the current terroristic group. And with the end of this terrorist came the end of terrorism in the Middle East. Just all a great economic boom in the late 2030s. And in the the very, very late 2030s, we saw the world organizations of like the U.S., Canada, Russia, China come together and form a anti-war committee, pretty much. And they pride themselves on decommissioning nuclear weapons, and militaries around the world become decommissioned. So a lot of third world countries decommission their militaries. Places like Afghanistan, Italy, Rome, any other huge metropolitan city that has any private militias or militaries, or countries that have militaries, were pretty much being slowly demilitarized. The idea was that eventually, at some point down the road, all countries would be completely demilitarized, focusing their money on resources like science and health. And during this early stage, there was a lot of other things that were kind of influencing this decision. Via wildfires in Africa, droughts in India causing millions of people to die of dehydration, and then the massive amounts of plague that had happened in the past 10 years in this story. And so a lot of things have been kind of piling up on the human race to kind of make them rethink their choices. And the idea to do interplanetary colonization was a huge thing during this time, this early 2040s and the late 2030s. This idea of moving to other planets like Mars, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and and all these other planets we have in our star system. And with all these things happening in the world, obviously people have questions about powers. Dictators were being pretty much decommissioned. The main two political powers on the earth at this point would have been your democratic states and your capitalistic states. So places like the U.S. Would have been more popular, as pretty much all of the Soviet style of like communism had been pretty much abandoned by this point. Places like China had become more of an ally than an enemy, like they are today. But then that leads us into where the book begins, truly. So I want to talk to you guys about the Exil forces, which are what I'm calling the alien invaders. I couldn't really think of a really good name for the aliens when I would come up with the idea for this book. It took me a year to figure out what to call them. I had to go back in my story and rewrite a lot of my paragraphs because at the beginning, when I first wrote it, I didn't have a name, so I just called them the alien invaders. And I was looking through some alien websites, some alien lore websites. Yes, those are a thing. I realized I came upon Exil, which is a random name off an alien website that I found that kind of listed a bunch of alien invasion names. And Exil just kind of felt good. It was a 3-letter word, super simple to kind of work in. And the idea was just to like get a name down. And then obviously now, 2 years later, I am here with still the Exil. I've yet to change it or alter it in any way. So the Exil are from the galaxy Virgo, which is 65.23 million light years away. And in their home galaxy, they're in a current war with an unknown species. Now, this unknown species is way, way stronger than they are. We're talking about universe destroyers, power. And this war in their galaxy has been happening for thousands of years. Okay. Obviously, a lot of this information will not be known by the human forces for hundreds of years, until these mysterious forces introduce themselves to the humans to help fight the Exil. But the Exil are putting up a fight on their front, but they're losing. And they're losing hard. They're losing millions upon millions every battle. Planets are getting completely, utterly destroyed. And so this defeat has pushed them into a corner. And they need land and they need resources. Things like oil, uranium, water, obviously land, steel. Things to, keep them working in condition. Because they are an alien force, but I wanted to keep this alien force grasped in some form of reality in some way. And so every civilization in the world, on our world anyway, would require some form of water to drink, food, and land, things to make things with, so steel, coal, iron, oil. Okay, so I wanted to keep it in that same reality. And so they need that, right? So the current estimated population of the Virgo Galaxy's Exil civilization is around 20 billion humans, or 20 billion Exil forces. Humans, on the other hand, are currently, as of the middle of 2040, sitting around 10 billion population. Now that number will fluctuate throughout the story quite exaggeratedly. And I wanted it to be a little confusing because I want it to be something people have to piece together and understand better. So when you're reading the book, it will be a tad bit confusing, but that's on purpose. So this estimated number is only an estimated number. That's just from the estimates of, I think currently in the book, I have it set to be the 2100s is his current estimate. During the beginning half of the war, only 1 billion of the Exil forces were in our Milky Way galaxy that we know of. The Exil are a strong enemy. Okay, they are very strong, but they are very weak. They're very agile creatures. They're very flexible. They can move relatively quickly when it comes to moving as a mass group. But there is the downfall. They are heavy creatures. They are 6'7", right around 400 pounds. Okay, and they wear about 100 pounds of solid steel armor. We're not talking small creatures. We're not talking little baby aliens with green eyes. Okay, we're talking massive, mega ton creatures. We're talking about like miniature robots in a way. Depending on their health, depends on their leadership command. So the higher the leadership, the higher their overall health is, which is really weird for the humans to understand in the beginning. We classify them in E's. So E1s would be like your standard infantry. Those can be taken out pretty quick with a couple bullets from a 5.56 rifle, being the M4. But the E6s, E7s, and E9s, and even E10s, which are super, super rare, 1 out of every 100 million Exil are E10. They can take up to 150 7.62 rounds before they're dead. So these are very strong creatures for the most part, especially the high command. They resemble a lot of the standard U.S. military setup. So they have generals, colonels, staff sergeants, lieutenants, and privates. They're very similar. But then again, the U.S. has a very basic military understanding of how it should be controlled and laid out. Some things that Exil don't do: they don't take prisoners. They will execute hostages. They do not care. They have a zero human policy, meaning they will do everything to wipe out every human. They have been known in the story. I list some things. I don't list some things. There's some of the things I don't list because of I think it's one of those things that I want to do in a different way. I want to explain in a different book. This is a multi-book system. But one of the things that I will be talking about eventually here is the fact that the Exil forces are known to target hospitals, especially civilians, because the civilian hospitals are full of women and babies and doctors, and they will target them specifically. The Exil, they have no rational thinking. The only idea they have is to completely annihilate the human race off the planet in any way see fit. Now, they won't launch nuclear devices, which is thankful for the humans, but one of the downsides to that is they are not able to wipe us out as quickly and as good as they want. The only reason they won't do nuclear weapons is obviously they cannot ruin the ground and the water that they need. So the Exil have pretty much no self-morals. And that leads us to the attack in 2040. And so in 2040, the Exil launched their first full-scale invasion. They just completely obliterate Moscow and Britain in the first day, which then begins the 100-Year War. So let's talk about some of the humans and some of the factions, because this is going to be very interesting throughout the story. It's going to fluctuate, and powers are going to maneuver a lot all the time. So 2041, something called the EDF is formed. It's called the Earth Defense Force. Okay, I got inspired by this a lot from watching different sci-fi movies and how and Star Troopers and a lot of the other sci-fi movies like Star Trek and Star Wars. But the EDF started in 2041. They have in their cabinet of resources, they become the new one-form government on Earth. The only government that joins them but also maintains their own diplomacy, I think that's the word. Basically, they're on their own still, but doing their own thing, is the U.S. Otherwise, the following countries join the EDF starting the first year they're developed. The U.S., Africa, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Spain, Argentina, Ireland, and Norway. Russia is very crippled from the initial invasion, as well as Britain's completely gone. They're completely wiped out, so they're no longer a thing. 2041, a leader, he becomes a dictator for the first couple of years of the war, John J. Trump. I got some inspirations, obviously, from some real world politics, and obviously, as people know, I'm a Republican, but I wanted to kind of poke a little fun at us Republicans and liberals, for the fun of the story. And then in 2046, after some rioting, Trump is killed in an assassination from an anti-war group during the 2046 to 2048 protest. A few years goes by. The EDF is dismantled after the protests. So the EDF were a harsh government entity. They were known to be very cruel in the methods. They had very strict policies and rules and regulations. Every male from 16 up was forced to join the military. If you're 40 and up and you did want to leave the military, you were able to, but you needed to join an information gathering group, which were held out at high-end facilities. and your job would be to gather information from spies and so on. There was a lot of regulations for women and babies and all types of cool, weird things cool things that they did to help better human civilization during this period of time. But I'll go into that more as we go into the chapters and the other videos. But the main thing for EDF was maintaining the population. Okay, that was their goal. They had to maintain a population that can withstand the Ixil. The Ixil were very powerful. They were killing millions of Americans and other humans every single battle. Every battle that we won, we still lost due to the amount of casualties we were taking. But so throughout the few years since the assassination of John, the EDF had been reformed in early 2050s, but it was being led by a council. Well, in 2059, some things happened, and a new leader was chosen, Adolf Park. Again, another little jab at real history with Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Park was a father of two who traveled from Eastern Europe across the Atlantic Ocean on a pretty much a private fisherman's boat. I think is how I have it listed. I might have it listed as also as a military boat, but that's not 100% accurate. Again, some of the things I'm still rewriting and I'm working on, so yeah, you might see some things change throughout the videos. But basically, he comes to the U.S. and becomes elected, and this begins a prosperous era for the next about 70 years. Adolf Park really does a great job of communicating for the EDF to the American public, as well as the world public. But because by 2059, a lot of Earth has been struggling by this point. And so that's kind of the EDF's broke down. The EDF is there to basically command majority of Earth's ground forces and naval forces, space forces, and aerial forces throughout the war. And you're going to see throughout the chapters as we go further into this that the EDF not only are the best bet for human civilization for a majority of the war, but they're not always alone. The U.S. military is still very, very, very strong. They win countless battles, including the Battle of Washington, D.C., Battle of New York, Battle of Los Angeles, Battle for Mexico and Canada. So they do a huge part in keeping the Western countries together. So that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for this video. Gives you kind of a taste of what we got planned for the future. If you have any ideas for the book, as we go through, let them down below. I'm not going to use all of them, obviously, but if you have some good ideas, I can always, we can always discuss them and see how that goes. I think for me, this book is going to be a passion project for history in a way, because this book isn't about who wins and who loses. It's not about a race or your background, where you're from. It's about survival, okay? It's about the singularity of death, in a way. In this book, I try not to list too many main characters. For the first 20-something chapters, I don't list any main characters except for some leaders here and there. Or if I'm trying to express something, maybe a letter or something, I'll mention a name or private. But I've been slowly introducing some special SEAL team people that are a SEAL team unit, and that kind of follows them. We kind of follow them on the side when they do special ops missions, which then in some way implement or affect a bigger battle at large. But my book is mainly trying to target the big battles. I feel like a lot of sci-fi movies and books fail in that regard, so they always focus on small groups. And I think it's important to understand that war isn't won by small groups. It's won by the large amount, okay? World War II wasn't won from some special ops Delta Force, it was won by the privates and lieutenants and sergeants on the ground in Normandy in France, in Germany, and all around the European theater. Okay, it was won by the majority of the forces. And so that's what I want to focus this book on. I want to focus it on the large group at large, and kind of bring you into the footsteps of what it's like to be on an actual battlefield during this time. There's new technologies erupting, new fighter jets that are intergalactic fighters. Laser guns are being developed, and planet colonization battles and SEAL team operations in Mars. And there's so many cool things. But at the end of the day, every chapter in some way discusses the bigger battles that are happening around the world. Currently, I'm writing the Battle of Miami, which is a massive, massive battle towards the beginning chapters of 27 and 28. That will test the will of the U.S. government and their ability to stand up to the Axis forces, because by this point, the war has been going on for several generations. Being that it started in the 2040s, and we are now in the 2105 era. So it's been going on for a very, very long time. And this is a world of constant war, and there's a lot of heartbreak and sadness, but also loyalty and pridefulness throughout the world. People who are in their countries are more prouder of their countries. The internal hate that we have today with our governments does not really exist, as our government and the people in this time period are very well on the same level. And there's a lot more women in this time in the government, which is really cool. I wanted to make the story a little bit more open to the idea that women can lead a country, and they can lead it well, as there's a lot more women lawyers and women congresswomen, and there's more Supreme Court justices that are women, because mainly most of the manpower, men-wise, are in conflict. Women aren't allowed in the EDF forces. Now, there is women in the U.S. Marine Corps during this period, but when the EDF were formed, they had a strict no women policy. Because women are crucial in the restoration of human civilization, because of the reproduction, and they didn't want to lose that. Obviously, you know, so well as if you have women on the front lines with men, especially if they're trapped behind enemy lines. You don't want something to happen where someone gets impregnated or something on the front lines, and that causes a whole nother can of worms when it comes to building field hospitals for women. And it was too much for the EDF, so the EDF decided to just cut it all out completely. Depending on how you look at that in the book, you could say that's sexist, but in the terms of the current civilization's world, it had to be that way. So we're coming up here towards the end. I probably ran out of gameplay, so I'm probably going to put a picture somewhere in here of like random stuff, like a black screen or something, if I ran out of gameplay. But I hope you guys are excited for the rest of the videos as we go into other chapters and we kind of get in more in depth into this. If you're still interested in more about the book, I have a free copy up of what I've currently written up on Discord, as well as on my Facebook and my Discord. I constantly make posts about the book. On my Facebook, I like to do news articles, so I'll do like a timeline where I'll post something that happens at a certain time in the book universe. So that's a way to get connected with the book without actually reading it. So it's pretty cool. So I hope you guys enjoy this. Like I said, I'll probably have the next video out probably this week sometime, probably like Thursday or something. Tomorrow I had planned to drop a Call of Duty video talking about COD, so keep an eye out for that. If you don't watch me on Twitch, but you want to, go to my Twitch. I got some new commands, a new background, new trailer over there. And yeah, I mean, we're booming, man. We're going to do this, and we're doing it well. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. Love y'all. And remember, man, don't get abducted by aliens. It's weird. Just don't let it happen.